If I were to ask you, is it dangerous currently in big cities? What would you say? If I were to ask you, is it currently more dangerous in big cities than it has been in the past few years? What would you say? And imagine most of you would say yes, and most of you would be correct. Why? Well, you're watching this video. And that's your responsibility and advantage. Not watching my videos, that's not what I mean. What I mean is paying attention to the news. Because we have a series of stories that are shocking. Most notably this one. LA woman suffers brain injury after stranger stabs her with garden shears. A woman moved to LA. She moved to LA. Now, of course, people are moving into cities. I get it. But not the people who are paying attention. The people who are paying attention are leaving California and New York, and they're going to Texas and Florida. So this woman moves to LA for a job, and a homeless man stabs her in the brain. In the head, right? But in the back of that, into her brain. She then stumbles into a store with garden shears in her brain, begging for help before collapsing. She now has a traumatic brain injury. And there's a bunch of stories that I could go through. A New York City man, 48, dies after being shoved in front of a subway train after he knocked his killer's phone onto the tracks and refused to retrieve it. He's the 12th person pushed onto the rails in 2020. That's more than one person per month being pushed into oncoming trains. It's crazy. There's a couple other stories, of course. They didn't give me chicken biryani. Man 49 sets fire to a restaurant because they botched his order. All of these stories and more about rising and shocking crime. And you know why these stories are popping up? Because there's too many. And because people are getting increasingly concerned with the escalating level of violent crime, but more importantly, for no reason. For no reason did this man stab this young woman in the back of the head. For no reason. I think it was Benny Johnson published a video driving through the streets of California. Tent cities, people sleeping. In airports now, the homeless people are moving in knowing that they can sleep in the warmth, indoors, and they can't really do too much about it. That's how bad things are getting. Now, the crazy thing about the story is that if this woman just paid any amount of attention, this wouldn't have happened to her. And so I can only say she's the victim of a horrific crime, and I feel bad for her. And then I can only say to all of you, do your due diligence. Pay attention to what's going on in the world, lest you become a victim. One day, someone shows up and beats one of your family members or beats you or robs you. You'll know why. Those of you that live in Los Angeles and New York and Chicago, and I know you watch these videos, you'll know why. More importantly, I think if you're paying attention to this stuff, you're less likely to be a victim. Here's the horrific story from the New York Post. A 24-year-old Los Angeles woman is recovering from a traumatic brain injury after a homeless man stabbed her in the head with a pair of gardening shears in an unprovoked attack. Kylie Watts, 24, was walking along Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood around 11:30 a.m. October 10th when the grisly assault took place, according to news station KTLA. The suspected stabber, 30-year-old Jonathan Cole, rammed a pair of gardening shears with 4-inch blades into the back of Watts' head as they passed while walking the street. For no reason, a deranged homeless man took gardening shears and just jammed them in the back of her skull into her brain. Watts ran to a nearby restaurant with the weapon still embedded in her skull and begged for help before collapsing to the ground. Staff at the restaurant were able to call 911, and Watts was rushed to a nearby hospital. It appears you can see her. It looks like this is where she may be running. I don't know. After the attack, she immediately called her mother, a psychiatric nurse in North Carolina. Despite the horrific nature of the crime, her mother said she understood what happened to her daughter was a social and systemic failure, and that more needs to be done to help those living on the streets who are struggling with mental illness. Fine. You reap what you sow. This is the response to a psychopath trying to murder your daughter. Okay. I won't live in these places, and I'm armed. I watch my back, and for obvious reasons, I do not trust random people on the streets in these big cities. But let me tell you something. I told you this story before. I was walking down the street in, was this West Virginia? Guy had a crossbow. I didn't think twice. I didn't think the guy was going to shoot me with a crossbow. I'm not worried about it. In these cities, I guess I would be. Maybe we should all be. Her mother, Amy Watts, said they'd been a foster family for 15 years and had experienced taking care of people suffering from severe mental illness. She understands this is a very sick person, the mother said. This is a problem that we as a society have to look at and figure out what's next, because this is just going to continue to get worse. Well, you're right about that, but congratulations. I assume these people are voting Democrat. Well, now you wonder why. Or now you don't need to wonder why it's happening. But I just want to point out, this Kylie Watts knows about the severe mental illness, that she was not keeping an eye and watching her back as a homeless person was walking near her. Watts underwent surgery and suffered a traumatic brain injury and remains in the hospital. She faces a difficult road to recovery and will likely face more long-term issues with her balance and vision as a result. On top of the brutal attack, Watts was just laid off from her job in tech recruiting, which she moved to Los Angeles for a matter of weeks ago, and currently has no health insurance, according to a GoFundMe set up on her behalf. According to the fundraiser, Watts will likely remain in the hospital for the next 2 weeks. You know, I feel bad for this woman. You know, maybe if you guys want to seek out her GoFundMe and try and give her some support, I hope that she's okay. And it's just brutal. It's just so brutal that it's people like this. I don't know about her voting patterns. I don't know what she believes, but it's people like this that's the reason why we can't have nice things. You saw what her mom said. Oh, it's just a very, very sick individual. And, you know, we need to help them. Yeah, I get it, man. But we need to deal with the psychosis. And it's not just about social workers holding your hand. This was a dangerous psychopath trying to murder someone for no reason. And just take a look at this. This woman moved to Los Angeles and then lost her job a couple weeks later. Okay. Well, look, I'll say it again. I feel for this woman, but let this be a reminder of what life would be like for you if you weren't paying attention to what was going on in the world. You'd wonder why it is my gas costs $7 a gallon in California, because you voted for Joe Biden, because he said he was going to get us off fossil fuels. And you cheered for it, didn't you? But an end to climate change is worth it. Now you're running everywhere. Now you can't get a job. And now a deranged homeless person is attacking you. Pay attention, please, to the world around you. Here you go. A man was shoved onto the train tracks and murdered. Heriberto Quintana, 48, was struck by an F train at the Jackson Heights Roosevelt Avenue station at 74th Street and Broadway in Queens just before 6 p.m. He is the 12th person to be shoved in front of a subway train so far this year. Police say the suspect was standing on the platform when Quintana bumped into him as he walked by, which knocked the suspect's cell phone onto the tracks. The suspect, 50, then demanded Quintana go get his phone, and when he refused, the two began arguing in Spanish and shoving. During the scuffle, Quintana was knocked onto the tracks and was struck by an oncoming F train. He was pronounced dead at Elmhurst Hospital. The suspect was taken into custody and charges are pending. Despite the crime and subway shovings repeatedly occurring across the city this year, New York City Mayor Eric Adams claimed on Monday there is only a perception that crime in the Big Apple is out of control. 12 people were pushed onto the tracks this year. Whatever, man. You want to live there? Fine. You want to be a cop in this city? Fine. Do not expect empathy from me, officer, when they put you in prison because you tried stopping a homeless man from stabbing someone in the head with shears and he falls down and dies. Don't expect any empathy from me when someone draws a weapon on you and you draw yours and they attack you. Don't expect any empathy from me when you move to these cities knowing full well what's going on. And then you get pushed onto the train tracks. At a certain point, we all have responsibilities. I am not so stupid as to play the game that you shouldn't blame women who walk down dark alleys at night with wads of cash and miniskirts. Don't be stupid. This is the game that the left likes to play, and so be it. Fine. They say it is don't blame the victim. The young woman was scantily clad and walking through a dark alley at night. It's not her fault. you want to talk about rape culture, misogyny, patriarchy, and all of these things. That means you're well aware that threats exist. You then say it's not the fault of the woman who walked through the dark alley in the middle of the night. Well, okay, we could break this down a couple of ways. Obviously, the perpetrator is the one mostly at fault, of course. But if you know, I'll give you a better example. Let's say there's someone in the middle of the road and they slam their brakes on, but you're, 100 yards away. You can see the car. Let's say they pull the handbrake and they try to do a spin or a drift. And then they spin around and get stuck. And you see them and you go, I'm going to keep going at my rate of speed and then hope they get out of the way. It's not my fault they were trying to do they're trying to drift in the street. Bam, you slam into them. Guess who's going to jail? Probably both of you. Because they'll say, failure to avoid an accident. You had more than enough time to recognize that you could have done something to prevent this. Or I'll give you an example. Yeah, you crash. It's your fault. They say the car stopped for whatever reason. You could have moved out of the way. You could have put the brakes on. You could have made the decision not to engage into a circumstance that could have resulted in damage. You could get in trouble for that. I don't know to what extent. But that's my point. We recognize you can be at fault. So if you walk through a dark alley at night with a wad of cash and you get robbed, I'm not going to have empathy for you. I'm going to say, we'll try and stop the perpetrator. We'll try and get your money back. But what are you thinking? Just because the perpetrators are other humans does not absolve you of your personal responsibility. Let's try another way to look at this. You're walking down the street and a flash flood happens, and you are in a low-lying area during a flash flood warning. Do we go, it's not your fault, it's nature's fault? No, you knew that there was a flood warning, and you walked into a floodplain and then got hit by a flood. Yeah, you chose to do it. Let's say you're walking through the woods and there's a big sign saying, do not go any further. There are mountain lions. And you go, I'll be fine. And you walk a few hundred feet and then a mountain lion attacks you. And you go, it's not my fault. It's the mountain lion's fault. The mountain lion shouldn't have attacked me. Here's what we say. It's a mountain lion. It's a wild animal. It's your fault. You should have not passed that sign. With the flood, well, we warned you about the flood and then you went in there. How about when people go hiking in the wilderness and it's like, do not go here, you'll get lost, and they get lost, and we got to send helicopters for them. They get billed for that. What about the signs where it's like, do not cave dive? We don't blame the obstacles and nature, but simply because the bad person or the bad event was caused by a human, we all of a sudden absolve you of all responsibility despite you knowing a threat existed. I don't care if the threat is a giraffe, a lightning bolt, or a human being. We don't blame lightning when you hold a metal rod into the air in an open field during a thunderstorm. We blame you for doing something stupid, knowing the threat existed and walking into it. Now, when it comes to humans who do bad things like pushing people on train tracks, well, yeah, we'll arrest those people and stop them. If we could stop the lightning from killing people, we would, but we can't. That doesn't absolve you of any responsibility. And you know what? I think regular people are starting to recognize that. Here you go from the Washington Post. Republicans hold the advantage on the issues most concerning Americans. Yeah, that's right. The economy, crime, etc. They say elections come down to hard to predict margins in Georgia, blah, 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 blah. They say we should highlight unusual question Fox asked poll respondents. We have to talk about how voters view various issues as important to their vote. People are complicated, generally, blah. So Fox asked a more pointed version of the question. What, if anything, is an issue for which a candidate's position would be a deal breaker? In other words, what's an issue where a candidate must agree with you or they lose your vote? The most common response was abortion, which is really interesting. About a fifth of voters identify the issue as key to their vote. That included 19% of Democrats and 27% of suburban women. Most striking, though, is how little agreement there is on deal breakers. The economy was the second most identified issue, with only 14% of respondents saying that candidates need to agree with them. However broad that category might be, about 1 in 8 voters said there was no deal breaker. The reason I bring this up is that crime is one of the top issues. In terms of deal breakers, abortion's big, obviously. Crime isn't. The reason why this is important, crime is not a big deal breaker. Let me explain this to you. Democrats say pro-choice. Republicans say pro-life. They're at odds. These become big deal breakers. Why? because voters perceive the other party as ideologically opposed to them. The economy. Democrats tend not to care because they're the party of the wealthy. Republicans care more because they tend to be working class. Democrats don't care about the border at all. But crime's here. Crime's also a possible deal breaker, but it's much smaller. The point is, everyone agrees on it. There's no other position. Even among Democrats, they don't want the crime to get worse. Defund the police is a losing position. Don't believe me? Ladies and gentlemen, John Fetterman. Fetterman says it was always absurd to talk about defunding the police. Oh, these people are disgusting pieces of garbage. Now all of a sudden they're like, crime's bad. Let's pander. John Fetterman chased an innocent black man and then held him at shotgun point. And he says, having dealt with that, I now understand the police. It's amazing. Hypocrites. If you want to vote Democrat and live in a city where your daughter or you might get stabbed in the brain by a pair of gardening shears by a homeless person, I don't care. Please go do it. But if you want to come out and claim it's not my fault, it's the crazy homeless guy's fault, and then simultaneously claim it's not his fault, he's sick. Sure. Live that way. Most people don't want to. Hence, what are we seeing? Regular people are outright saying, I've had it with this. I don't want the crime. I want to live a peaceful, normal life. Crime is really getting to people. Now, of course, the big issue at play is the economy. That's really what people care about. It's the economy, stupid. But the economy plays a role in all of this. The reason why we're seeing a massive explosion of a mentally unwell homeless population, the economy's in the gutter. People don't want to admit it. And I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it. I've been talking about this for some time. I said, where is everybody? We went out on Memorial Day to go see a movie, and the shopping center and movie theater was like a mall. It was like an outdoor mall. Empty. And I'm like, where is everyone? Like, it's just weird. And then I made the joke that everybody got raptured. Seamus, of course, from Freedom Tunes, he was like, no, I know. Because he didn't. That'd be funny. No, but nobody got raptured. I was just like, where is everybody? And then I think it was Ian who made the point on IRL. He says they're all homeless. And I went, oh, crap. That's why we're seeing an explosion in the homeless population. These are the people who are on the verge of losing their grip on society. What I mean is people who are living paycheck to paycheck, working minimum wage jobs at grocery stores, ice cream shops, and restaurants. When the pandemic hit and all these businesses shut down, these people had no money. They get evicted. They become homeless. Now we have a massive homeless population. Many of them fall into drugs. Some of them lose their minds. And now you have a 30-year-old dude stabbing a woman in the brain with gardening shears. That's Joe Biden. That's it. Donald Trump deserves some blame here as well. But Joe Biden has really made things substantially worse. You don't believe me? Take a look at the inflation rate and real wage growth. As soon as Joe Biden gets in and issues these executive orders, we see an inversion of the existing track. Things seem to have been improving under Trump, despite them being bad during COVID in 2020. Joe Biden comes in, issues a bunch of executive orders. Everything gets bad. Right now, what do we have? Joe Biden is draining the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Why? I thought the Inflation Reduction Act was going to make everything better. Nope. Everything's still getting bad. So he's hoping to keep costs down by dumping our emergency reserves at a time of war. Talk about a despicable, despicable man. But you know what? All these people, they voted for Biden. They didn't listen to me. They didn't listen to you. They went and did it. And now they can reap what they have sown. Unfortunately, for the rest of us, it means we have to reap the same thing. But I'll tell you, at the very least, those of us who pay attention to the news and know what's going on, we are better prepared for all of this. That's it. We're better prepared for all of this. So when it all comes crashing and these people are living in their cities with rampant crime, we're going to have our emergency case of beans. When the food system collapses, when the prices go through the roof, we will have emergency food, emergency water. We'll be armed and we'll be able to protect ourselves. And many of you who are smart will have already gotten out of the cities. Many of you who got out of the cities a while ago will already have your chickens, your goats, and your cow. And those of you who already live outside the cities are laughing at the rest of us for being late to the party. That's for dang sure. We're going to be getting a cow probably. I don't know if we can handle a cow, to be honest. I was told that cows produce like 8 to 10 gallons of milk per day. And I'm like, that's a lot of milk. Too much milk. Too much milk from one cow. So people were like, do goats. Get goats instead. And it's like, okay, maybe we'll do goats. But goats, I guess, have like fattier milk content. I guess that's kind of good. I'm mostly keto. So it's like probably low carb, high fat. I don't want to say keto because I was doing keto for a while and then I brought some sugars back in just to like, I don't know, whatever. But mostly cut out the grains, the breads, and things like that, and the sugars. But, we're going to get out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if you saw my Instagram, instagram.com/Timcast. Follow me there. Posted a video of the new building. It's just the shell so far. Insulated steel frame building, 40 feet tall. It's amazing. And we're going to be building it out. The new studio is going to be epic. It's going to be really, really cool stuff. And then on the property, we're going to have animals because we want to be self-sufficient to the best of our abilities. The new studio is going to be off the grid. It's going to be, I'll put it this way, not isolated from the grid. It's going to be able to function off the grid with water and power. And then we're going to have our own food with animals, with chickens, with goats, with cows. And in the event that all does come crashing down to the worst degree possible, we'll have it hard. I'm not going to pretend that we're going to be expert survivalists or anything like that, but we're going to be way better off than the people who go jogging in the city and get stabbed in the brain by a homeless person. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.